I'm Brian Cunningham with ELPRO Technologies, and today's webinar is going to talk about how to access a piece of equipment from anywhere in the world if you have access to the internet through our 645 cellular modem. And you can access your piece of equipment via phone, tablet, or PC by setting up a secure VPN. Okay, just a quick introduction to the 645M-4. It's the latest addition to ELPRO's cellular product range. We've had a few different cellular modems in the past. We started off with some 3G devices, and now we have a nice 4G cellular modem. Cell modems can be accessed via the internet, and that allows for some very significant capabilities. One of the applications that we're going to be talking about today is if you connect a cell modem to your piece of equipment or piece of machinery, and then you ship that piece of machinery to any location around the country or any location around the world, as long as it has cellular access. What this will allow you to do is from your laptop or phone or tablet to access the configuration menus of that device or the diagnostic menus of that Ethernet-based device from your home, from your office, from a hotel room, literally from anywhere, as long as you have access to the internet. This diagram here shows the layout of the network that we're going to be talking about. On the left-hand side, you've got your computer, phone, tablet, etc. They will have to have access to the internet by phone. That could be just simply through cellular, and therefore cellular access to the internet, and then into the carrier's network, and then from as long as we are within range of a cellular tower to the ELPRO 645M-4, and then connected to the Ethernet port on the cell modem, you can have a PLC, one of our 115E Ethernet expansion modules connected to level, temperature, pressure sensors or whatnot, or essentially any Ethernet-based piece of equipment. The first step is you need to get a SIM card and a data plan from a carrier. So there's two options here. The first option is to buy the SIM card and the data plan direct from the carrier. So contacting Verizon or AT&T, or in Canada, that would be Rogers or Bell or TELUS. The general rule of thumb is not to go into a retail store simply because they usually focus on phones. They don't typically focus on cellular modems. So often if you're to tell it's an ELPRO cellular modem, they'll probably have a couple of question marks on their face asking what type of phone is that, when it's not really a phone, it's a cellular modem. So if dealing directly with one of the carriers, you're going to have to find a group that deals with data plans for cellular modems. Option 2, which is the much simpler, much easier option, is to buy it from a third-party company that specializes in machine-to-machine communications. So these are companies that sell SIMs that are specifically for use with cellular modems, and they essentially buy data plans and access to carriers' networks. One of the companies that we've dealt with very successfully, M2M Wireless, based in California. This company has access to cellular carriers around the world. Okay, now when you buy your SIM card, you have two choices, either a public or a private IP address on the SIM card, and there are some very distinct differences. Public IP addresses can be accessed by anyone on the internet. So that means when we insert the SIM card into the cell modem, we power it up and get connected to the carrier. I could go onto a website like Network-Tools and use their ping utility and ping that cellular modem. Now, for security purposes and to minimize the possibility of having large data bills, you would have to disable a bunch of the services on the cell modem. So you'd have to disable things like SSH, disable ping replies, disable telnet, etc., etc. Otherwise, there's the possibility that somebody could continuously ping your cell modem and you would rack up a very large data charge. However, in speaking with some network engineers, even if all of the above is disabled and the modem never replies to any messages coming from external devices, continuous pings can rack up megabytes of data in the period of minutes. So this is going to be a hacking situation. This is where somebody is deliberately doing this for malicious purposes. So these are the Russians, the Chinese, I don't know who else, but these are bad actors, you know, not individual good citizens of those countries. These are people who have criminal intent in mind, just to be clear on that. On the other hand, you can get a private IP address from one of the carriers, from all of these carriers, and the difference is that they cannot be publicly accessed. Now, if we look in this part right here, we can see these are all the private IP addresses. And there's three different classes of private IPs. They just simply refer to the subnet portion of it. And anything that is outside of these IP ranges is a public IP address and can be accessed by anybody on the internet. In order to access a private IP address, you must VPN, or you must get connected into the carrier's private network. Private IP addresses can be duplicated across cellular modems or pieces of equipment. So for example, ELPRO radios, we usually come with a default IP address of 192.168.0, and it's between .100 and 199. Now we can reuse those IP addresses over again and again, simply because they are not connected together. So it would be analogous to Main Street in every town. But since every town has a different name, there is no address confusion. Okay, so important to understand the differences between public and private IP addresses makes a very big difference. So you should specify that with the carrier. The next factor when you're ordering your SIM card is fixed or a dynamic IP address on the SIM card. A dynamic IP address changes the address every time you power cycle the modem, and after certain intervals it refreshes. This is what your cellular phones use. So the IP address of your cellular phone is constantly changing. The complication with that is that it requires a domain name server, a DNS service, to plot from a fixed web address to the changing IP address of the SIM card. So what that means is when we want to access the modem, we now type in a website instead of a standard, 10.15. Whatever IP address, instead of a standard numerical IP address. So it requires a small amount of additional setup in the modem. It's not overly complicated. It can be done, but a fixed IP address is simply much simpler. If the cost is the same, I would always recommend getting a fixed IP address because it just means that we do not have to deal with a DNS service. We don't have to do the additional setup. Also, a lot of SCADA programs only allow you to enter a numerical IP address. They do not allow you to enter a website. So there's that additional complication as well. So my recommendation, get a fixed IP address on your SIM card. Just makes life a lot simpler. Now, if you can't, or there's cost reasons or other reasons for using a dynamic IP, there are DNS service providers that can offer a free DNS service. Now, as we all know in the real world, when something is free, they're obviously making money off something else to do with you. And I'm not exactly sure what their business models are, but there are a couple of them. No IP has a free service. They also have another one where they charge $25 a year. Certainly not a significant, not a huge amount of cash, but a small incremental amount of money that will add up. There's, if you Google free DNS service providers, there's a bunch of them that are available. They tend to list the differences between them. It's tough to fully understand. You'd have to go onto the website and Google top 10 DNS free service providers, and they'll give you a bunch of these companies that offer this service. Okay, so then once you have got your SIM card and you're looking at getting a VPN set up directly into the cell modem, there's two methods. You could either get a VPN directly into Verizon or AT&T or whatever cellular provider's network. Now, here's what I understand the process involves. It can take some period of time. It's not something that you'll be able to do right away. Often there'll be minimum charges, such as it might cost $250 a month. That wouldn't really be suitable for smaller users. How this works is they send you a link to the VPN software, you download and install it, and they'll also send you a user and password. Method 2 is to use a free VPN service like OpenVPN and then follow the ELPRO app note to get it set up. The benefit to that is that it allows you to avoid the monthly charge. The first step is you have to create a VPN client on the laptop or your cell phone. Then you have to create a VPN server on the 615M-4 cell modem, and we have an app note that walks you through that process. Then you generate the certificate on a laptop. It is then downloaded into both the modem and your computer. After entering the data, certificate generation takes anywhere from 90 to 120 minutes on a laptop. So you need something with a little bit of processing power, and there are a number of steps to go through. It requires modifying files, entering a bunch of parameters. Generally, it's going to be a 3 to 4 hour process if all goes well. The good news is that you only need to generate this certificate once to access multiple 645Ms or to have multiple laptops connecting to a 645M. Option 2, and this is what I would recommend, and this is one of the examples we're going to walk through today, is to buy a VPN service from a third-party company. The company I've dealt with is M2M Wireless, and they charge $25 per month for 3 devices, as in 3 laptops or a phone, a laptop, and a tablet, any 3 type of devices to connect into their network. What they then do is once you have VPN'd into M2M's network in California, they provide a link to the carrier, and that directs directly to your cellular modem. The service is dead simple. It's incredibly quick. It's incredibly fast. It's a 3-step process. They send you a link for the VPN software. Download the link, install on your computer. That takes about 3 or 4 minutes. Then they send you a user and password. They send all this information in a single email. You run the Cisco VPN Connect service, enter the user and password, and presto, you are inside of their network. Okay, we'll talk about that more in a couple of minutes, and I'll show you the screens and how that works. Or the other option is use OpenVPN and don't pay that $25 a month charge. It's the same as the previous slide. It's a 3 to 4 hour process, but it is quite a complicated setup. So as a result, I'm going to show you how OpenVPN works, but because it's a 3 to 4 hour process, it's beyond the scope of today's webinar. The $25 monthly charge from a company like M2M Wireless has the following advantages. For one thing, you're connected immediately. In other words, they can send SIM cards to you via FedEx today. You'll get the SIM cards tomorrow. They'll send you the link to the VPN software along with your user password today. You'll be connected tomorrow. Dealing with a smaller company like that means that technical support is easy to locate. It's often the same fellow that you'll talk to whenever you have a technical support issue. They will also provide support for your specific brand of modem. Now, that's not something that you'll get from any large company, Verizon or AT&T. It's just going to be generic support of their specific service. If you can't get the modem set up, they will say that's not their issue. So again, my recommendation to have a quick and less complicated setup is to buy the VPN service from a third-party company like M2M Wireless, and I'm sure there's other competitors that offer similar capabilities. Okay, so when M2M Wireless sent me a link, I clicked on the link, downloaded the installer, then we double-click on that to run the installation process. They use a Cisco VPN. Okay, once we've installed the software, they provide a link to their internal network. We enter the link in this box right up here. We press connect, and next up pops the username and the password that they send you in the same link. We hit OK, and literally about 3 seconds later, you'll see this message right here. So extremely quick, extremely fast to get online. There is no complicated setup. There is nothing that you need to set on board the cellular modem to make it compatible with this network. Absolutely nothing. Also, we can have private IP addresses, and because it's private, nobody can access it. So you don't need to worry about bad actors in Russia, China, Nigeria, whatever countries, or they could be your neighbors, here in the U.S. or Canada. It could be anybody, but if with a private IP address, they cannot access your device. So that's a big advantage. Okay, once we have set up once we've made our VPN connection, then we can go ahead and ping the IP address of the modem. Now you'll note that this is the cellular IP of this modem of a unit I have sitting on my desk here. 10.165.192.11. It's a fixed IP, so it's super simple to figure out. And once I have that connection, I can go ahead and do a ping. And you can see, here we go. Now we can access this, this modem. Now what I found was that in my office, I found that oftentimes the first 2 pings would fail, but the next 2 pings work perfectly. And when I ping it subsequent times, everything works just fine. So I'm not quite sure. It could be because maybe I don't have as good cellular coverage or something of that sort. But that's what I noticed. So the reason for mentioning this is if it doesn't work on the first 2 pings, don't panic. It will eventually work. And I'm not sure if they have some sort of keep alive or root refresh or something of that sort. But once they know the root and you ping it multiple times, it replies 100% of the time. Now I tested this at a customer's office, and on the first try, I got all the pings through. So again, I'm not sure whether it was because I simply had better cellular coverage in that customer's office that the pings worked perfectly, or maybe I was closer to a cellular tower. Hard to know for sure. Now you note some of these times here. The average time, 605 milliseconds. This was from my office, and when I went to a customer's office, the very first row of pings, the average was about 400 milliseconds. So keep in mind that you're traveling through a lot of networks. It's going from the customer's office to the nearest cellular tower, over the network to M2M's office in California, and then back out through the internet to the carrier's tower, and then over the air to the cell modem. So we got a lot of wireless, a lot of connections occurring, which is why these ping times are a little bit longer here. Okay, so once I've done that, all I have to do is I take that same IP address and I enter it in my browser. In this case, I use Firefox, and I enter :8080. As soon as I do so, hit return, up pops the configuration page of the cellular modem, and hey, I'm logged in. Okay. Now, there's a couple of things you would need to do to make sure that you can access the cell modem's configuration pages. One of them is, if I want these pings to respond, I have to allow pings from the WAN port to the LAN port. Okay. Now, where that is we click on Network, we click on Firewall, and then we click on Security to locate this page. Okay. Now I've set SSH access to deny for security reasons there, or just because I don't need SSH access. So I just decided to disable it, even though it's a private IP address and it's pretty secure anyway. Okay, so HTTP access must be set to allow, and it must be set to any IP address, so I can access it from anywhere, anywhere in the world from any IP address. Then we have to enter the web server, the port that this device uses, which is port 8080. So these are the parameters that I need to set on the cell modem to allow me to access the configuration pages over the air remotely from the internet. If I want to access the pings, if I want to be able to ping it, test it, this is what I need to set. I need to set it to allow. Okay, now the next thing is your external piece of equipment. In our case, it might be an ELPRO 115S expansion module, or it could be one of our 915U2 radio systems linking other devices together. In this case, I tested it with our 245U-E Ethernet modem. The Ethernet modem had a LAN IP address of 192.168.0.178. Therefore, I had to create a port forward to this IP address. It uses port 80 in the device, so I had to enable port 80. In order to set that up, we just type all this information in the bottom row and click Add. So we type the name. This can be text of anything. It could be maybe it's a heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, one of those huge systems that they ship all over the country, and you want to be able to access it in case the customer calls up and says, hey, we don't have any heat or we don't have any cooling, and you're thinking, I'm thousands of miles away. How am I going to troubleshoot that? Well, if you stick a cellular modem on this equipment, now you can ship it pretty much anywhere in the country and be able to access it from your office, maybe from a hotel room, maybe from your home in the evening if it's a critical piece of equipment that you need to log into to access their diagnostics right away. Okay. Then we enter the external port, port 80, the IP address of our 245U-E right there, and the internal port, port 80 as well. We click Add, save and apply, and reset the modem, and now we can connect to the external piece of equipment. Okay, so there's those two extra steps that you need to do inside of the cellular modem to connect to the device. Now, let's not forget that the cell modem has to be connected to the carrier's network initially, and we talked about that in the last webinar that we did, how to get the 645M connected to a cellular network. So we did record that one. Please feel free to contact any of us at ELPRO for a link to that YouTube video, and that will show you how to get the cell modem connected to the carrier. Then if you want to access the external device that is connected to the cell modem, in our example here, where I connected a 115E-2 up to the LAN port, the RJ45 jack on the cell modem. So we just have a Ethernet cable connected between the cell modem and our 115E-2. All we have to do is we type in that same IP address of the private SIM followed by :80. And next thing you know, up pops this configuration menu. From here, all we do is we connect to whatever screens we would like to, and now we have complete access to that remote Ethernet-based piece of equipment from anywhere in the world that we have an internet connection. So very powerful, very flexible, and if you go the route using M2M's wireless or specifically a third party's VPN service, you can be connected literally the next day after the day you receive your SIM cards. Okay, the second method is to set up OpenVPN, an OpenVPN client on your laptop or your phone or your tablet. And we've got this for, it works on Android and Windows-based devices as well. And then we set up OpenVPN server, or we configure the OpenVPN server on board the 615M-4. Okay, so what you would have to do is you download OpenVPN software from this website, openvpn.net. Just Google it, download OpenVPN download, and it'll pop up this this website. It does save you the cost of a VPN into the carrier or M2M, but it's a 3 to 4 hour process. There's about 50 to 60 parameters to enter, and generally I would suggest it's something that we should leave to network engineers. Okay. So a couple of things to think about is that you have to tell the carrier or tell the M2M, the third-party provider, what you want to do with the SIM cards. It's very important that you do that regardless. So for example, our 645M-4, we can have text messaging and email messaging sent from the device and based on the status of discrete inputs. It's important that you tell the carrier, I need text messaging or SMS messaging available on that SIM card. So same with this one here. We should tell them that we want to do a VPN from a computer into the device. They'll make sure it's set up properly. We can also set up OpenVPN from cell modem to cell modem. If you, for example, run into complications of setting up a VPN from within your corporate network. I know that a lot of large companies, once you log into their corporate network, for example, if you VPN into their corporate network from a hotel or from your home office, they do not allow a second VPN to get out. So you would have to disconnect from the corporate network and then log in, and that may have some complications associated with it as well. So if you wanted to avoid that, you could have a second cellular modem at your home office location, or carry that with you and use OpenVPN between two cellular modems, between two of our 645M-4 modems. Okay. So the important thing is when you buy the SIMs, tell the person you're buying them from what you plan to do with it to make sure they set them up properly. Otherwise, if you're using private SIMs, there may be an issue with modem to modem. Now, I told the folks at M2M what I was doing. They said, "Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, we'll make sure they're set up exactly so that you can do so." Otherwise, if you use public IP addresses on your SIM cards, you don't have to worry about that because anybody can access it from anywhere in the internet, including our this OpenVPN software. But of course, a public IP means that your modem is open to the public. Anybody on the internet can then ping your IP address. So because a 3 to 4 hour process, a little bit outside of the scope of a 1 hour webinar, we're just going to give you a summary of how to set these devices up. Okay, the very first thing, go to the OpenVPN, download their installer, then go ahead and install it. One of the important things is we want to make sure that Ensure Easy RSA-3 certificate management scripts are installed. So when I initially ran the installer, I had to select a custom installation, and I had to remove these red X's from this Easy RSA certificate management script. And you just click on that arrow, and it gives you some options to include it as an installation, as something that will be installed. Okay, so we'll just give you a quick summary of the steps involved. First of all, you generate the certificate and key for the server, for the modem. You generate the certificate and key for the clients on the laptop. You generate something called the Diffie-Hellman parameters. And sorry, I think this is a typo. Generally 90 to 120 minutes on the laptop. Maybe if you got a super fast laptop, it might be 30 minutes. And then once we have generated those on the computer, we configure the OpenVPN server on our 615M-4. And that is configured under Services, then selecting VPN, and then selecting OpenVPN right here. Then the next step is installing OpenVPN Client on the laptop. Okay, so there is this application note here. Shows you how to set up OpenVPN Connect Client on Windows, as well as if you're doing it on a tablet or a phone, it's in the App Store. So in the App Store, you will find OpenVPN Client that you can download to a tablet or a phone. The next step is create the .opvn files and import them into the laptop or tablet. So we open the files that we created during the previous certificate generation process. We have to modify these files. Best way to do that, follow the ELPRO application note. Then we import the files into OpenVPN Connect on the laptop, the software we installed in the previous step. Next, what we do is we select one of the profiles we wish to connect. Oops, my apologies. Let's go back here. Then the process is really simple. We just run a browser. We enter the LAN IP address of the 645M-4. Now, this is the LAN IP, not the cellular IP address of the 645M-4. So same IP address as if you had an Ethernet cable plugged from your computer into the LAN port of the cellular modem. Next thing you know, up pops the configuration of the 645M-4. Then we've got our connection there. Now, the next step is accessing an external device once that VPN connection has been made to the cellular modem. In order to access our external device, in this case, this is showing screens off a phone. This is the IP address of the 115E Ethernet expansion module that we have connected with an Ethernet cable to the LAN port of the 645M-4. We simply type in the LAN IP address of the 115E Ethernet expansion module, and up pops our user and password request. From here, we'll see the standard menu of all the diagnostics and everything you can imagine, configuration menus, etc. And in this case, we clicked on our dashboard, and we can see all the parameters of the analog inputs, the digital inputs, the digital outputs, etc. So from here, it's just as though you have an Ethernet cable plugged directly into the 115E, and next thing you know, you are connected to it via the internet from anywhere in the world, as long as you have an internet access to the World Wide Web. Okay, so that's kind of it in the summary. Again, I'd like to emphasize that there are two options. One option, I would say, is more oriented towards network engineers. That is using OpenVPN. The advantage to it is it saves the $25 monthly charge. By the way, that is in addition to your standard data charge off of the cell modem. So the standard data charge, might be $10, $15 a month. In addition to that, there would be $25 a month. That allows you access for 3 separate devices, like from 3 computers or 3 phones or 3 tablets. And so the OpenVPN, much more complicated, designed for network engineers. A more lengthy process, probably requires a little bit of troubleshooting, just like lots of things in our programmable electronic world that we live in. Or the other option is getting connected without all of that complication by buying the VPN access from a provider, from a third-party provider. Okay, so once we've got that all set up, this just gives you one quick example of a customer that has used our 615M-4. They supply fracking fluids to oil companies for pulling oil out of the ground. And what they previously did without any communications, they were driving around these areas in these big trucks full of fracking fluids, and they would just drive from site to site to site, having no idea which tanks needed filling and which tanks just needed topping off. So now they connected a bunch of our 915U2 meshing radios connected to level sensors in each of these tanks. And they used the 915U2 radios to get the data to a location where they had good cellular coverage. And from here, they could connect to these cellular modems, find out what the level was in all these tanks, and dispatch trucks only to the tanks that were low on fracking fluids. So you can imagine the savings that they had. Hours, mileage, wear and tear on the trucks. It drastically improved the efficiency of the network, of the company's operation, I should say. Okay, that's pretty much it for today's session. I hope it was informative and you learned a couple of things. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us directly.